A very good afternoon to you all. Welcome to the webinar on theory and practice in applied linguistics and TESOL, future directions, organized by the Department of English and Humanities at University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh. To give the welcome remarks about today's webinar, I would like to invite Professor Shamshad Murtaza, Acting Vice Chancellor of ULAB and the Dean of School of Arts and Humanities. Professor Shamshad Murtaza.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you so much. And good to see everyone, because I know it's difficult during the exam week and you have made it. So kudos. And I'm glad to see some of our colleagues from different institutions, so who have joined in. Professor Amin Rahman has joined in, from overseas, from the United States. And there are some college teachers as well. And this is a very happy occasion, especially for top management at ULAB, when we get to see stakeholders taking part in events like this. So this is a great platform to interact, to share ideas, to brainstorm, and to discuss issues that really matter. So the idea of theory and practice, as the title suggests, that ULAB does not believe in confining education to classroom teaching only. We are a liberal arts school, and it's all about free thinking. And you cannot think freely without liberating your mind, going beyond the boundaries of a classroom. So the title is very pertinent, and I would like to thank both Dr. Shaila and Dr. Hafsa for taking up the initiative. And I'm sure that, so those who have, who are attending, will learn a great deal, and I'm looking forward to learn myself. I know about Shala's work, how theoretically informed she is, and how she's trying to incorporate some of the recent trends of applied linguistics in her own research. And so she is a leader of her own kind. So she's not only a professor who teaches her students or supervises her students. So she is leading a research community, and that is amazing. That is something that, we have been missing in Bangladesh, because our professors, our teachers, colleagues often tend to exist in their own silos. So they do their own research, so pursue their own career. But in Shala, we have seen that, so she's trying to lead from the front. So she has already brought out a commendable publication from Routledge, working on quite a few. And of course, she has an impressive list of publications. So we are really, really happy that, Shaila is working with us at ULAB. Of course, she's with IML, but in an advisory capacity, she has been guiding our Center for Language Studies. About Dr. Hafsa. So Hafsa has joined in during the COVID. So we have probably met her face-to-face maybe 2 or 3 times. And it's no wonder that she's going to talk about the avatar that we have as online teachers. So she's going to talk about the identity crisis that we teachers are facing during this transition to online teaching. Because previously, so we had Arifa, who's the head of the English department now. So she is our Moodle master. So she took care of our online platform, but that was kind of a subsidiary system, so the support base for our, teaching platform. But in the last 14 or 16 months, we have been forced to migrate, and become netizen altogether. So this is a new trend, and we are still learning. We can say that, we are 100% successful, we are 100% online. Everyone says that, but not everyone has the skill, orientation, mindset to be an online teacher. Because the idea of remote teaching, remote learning, so has been there for more than 50 years, if not more, but it never caught up, but suddenly, because of the COVID, we're all transitioning and we are migrating to a new system. We have already noticed that many of our students are suffering from health issues. Psychological well-being is a major issue. I'm not going to give you any figure, but I have access to the data and it's very alarming. So our students are not being able to cope with the pressure of online teaching. And the same goes for our faculty members also, right? So we are Zoom fatigued, so looking at the black mirror, not being able to connect at a human level, so delivering lectures without actually understanding whether the students are retaining those lectures or not. There's no face-to-face interaction, and we're becoming almost like an extension of the computer. In Shala's case, it's MacBook Air. But the whole idea is, that we are thinking of the digital devices as our prosthetic selves. Just like I'm wearing these glasses as an extension of of my eyes. So the same goes for my computer. The same goes for my mobile phone. So they have become an extension of ourselves. Whether it's a good thing or bad thing, we do not know yet. But the sooner we can come back to classrooms, that's something that we all look forward to. So I hope you are all keeping well during this pandemic, and I'm really, really happy that this is happening. And I would like to thank the speakers, Dr. Shaila and Dr. Hafsa, for doing this. And I think this dialogue will keep on going even after this session is over. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Shamshad Murtaza. We are very thankful that Kaiser sir has joined us. May I now request Professor Kaiser Haq, who is also a full-time professor at the Department of English and Humanities, to say something about today's topic.
Thank you very much. There's no point in my saying anything except hello everyone, and I'm delighted to see Shaila after a long time, and also Farzana, and these topics have chosen are very relevant, and this particular area of research, will continue to be vital importance. Whether we like it or not, even if we go back to the old normal, I suspect online teaching will be a part of the regular program. So I think we are in for an age of hybridity, and that will call for renewed efforts to modify our teaching strategies so that students and teachers feel that they're engaged in something meaningful and productive. Anyway, without further ado, over to the speakers. Shaila, I'm delighted that you are here, and Farzana, I'm really happy that you have put a lecture together. I'll watch the recording later, because I have a program in the afternoon. So, all the best, and my blessings and warm affection. Nadia, you can.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Introduce the speakers and start the session.
Thank you so much, Kaiser sir, for joining us. We will start our session now, but before that, if you have any questions, you can write in the chat box. The speakers will address them as they give their session. Our first speaker is in today's webinar titled Theory and Practice in Applied Linguistics and TESOL, Future Directions, is Dr. Sayyida Farzana Sultana, who is an assistant professor at the Department of English and Humanities, University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh. She did her MA in English Literature from the University of Dhaka, and later a PhD in Education from the Warner School of Education, University of Rochester, USA. She also has an advanced certificate in online teaching from the same school. Currently, she is the General Secretary of TESOL Society of Bangladesh. Dr. Sultana has over 15 years of teaching experience in different universities in Bangladesh and in the US. That also includes working as a writing consultant at Warner School for 5 years. She's also an alumna of FLTA program at North Carolina State University. Her expertise and research interests include TESOL, teacher professional development, academic writing in TESOL context, curriculum development, use of technology in language teaching, online teacher identity development, and designing effective online courses. Dr. Farzana Sultana will speak today about online teaching in today's webinar. Please welcome Dr. Farzana Sultana.
Okay, so good afternoon to you all. I hope you are doing well. Can you see my screen, all of you, and can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Because the internet on my side is a little bit, I think, fluctuating. So I hope it will be all right. Okay. So as you can see from the screen, my topic today will be online teacher identity development, what we need to do. And one of my concerns regarding today's presentation is how a specific topic that is very close to my heart, because I did my PhD research on identity development of online teachers. And actually, I am concerned because it was done in a completely different context. It was done in the US, but I will try my
So Hafsa, you can turn off your video. I think you are having just turn off your video, like
yes,
maybe that will help.
So, yeah, okay, I'll do that. I'll share my screen again. Yes, I think for some reason it's fluctuating today. So, okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, okay. So as I was saying that, I hope that there will be a few takeaways, 1 or 2 takeaways for you to ponder over as we finish this presentation. And I believe my research findings are extremely significant, especially in the current circumstances, because we all are teaching or sort of forced to teach online. And I think these findings will inform and guide your practice as teachers, or as teachers, like, in any kind of setting, or online teachers, or, your practices as an online teacher. So I would like you to reflect a little bit. I posted these questions in your chat box. So I would like you to think about these for a little bit and then share your thoughts. So the questions are here on the screen as well. Do you actively think about or reflect on your teacher identity in any setting, not specific to online classes? And what kind of teacher are you or would you like to be? And what kind of online teacher are you or would you like to be? And if there are any differences between your teacher identity and online teacher identity, your general teacher identity, your traditional teacher identity, and online teacher identity. And if so, if you think there are differences, how is your online teacher identity different from your traditional teacher identity? So I'd give you a few seconds to think about it and share your thoughts very briefly, because we have time constraints. Anyone would like to go? Anyone from the audience?
Hello, Hafsa
So,
madam. It's Noor here. I think I'd like to
yes.
talk about the fourth question where you talked about the difference between teacher identity and online teacher identity. So what I feel that as far as the adaptation and the interactional pattern is concerned, this is what is making the difference, and that's the difference in identity. Because as long as teaching the content is concerned, we're trying to make sure that as much as we can make it understandable or lively for the students. But yes, as far as the interaction is concerned, we still have a distance to cover.
Thank you very much, Noor, for sharing your thoughts. I see there is another person who has commented in the chat box that to me, our teacher identity also includes online teacher identity. Yes, and I'll be talking about this. This is one of the findings of my research as well. So is there anyone else who would like to share? Shamsi has posted something to from Daffodil University. I would like to be a helpful teacher even in the online platform. Yes, anyone else?
Yeah, Dr. Hamza, this
Yes.
is Naushad Kabir. Yeah.
Hello.
So in fact, I would, yeah. So thank you. For example, yeah, the first one is definitely I reflect on my teacher identity, and as for number two, I would like to say that I think that I like to go to the level of the students when I teach, and I like to feel their pulse and then customize my lecture accordingly. And but when it comes to online teaching, I try to do the same, but I find that my online teacher identity is slightly different from the face-to-face teacher identity. And the main thing that is missing in the lecture is, interaction. And it is not the interaction, the verbal interaction, rather I will say is the facial or gestural interaction, okay, and the emotional transactions. For example, you look at the blank faces of the students and you immediately understand that there is something wrong with your lecture. You need to rephrase it, something like this. Or sometimes you crack a very relevant joke, and the students laugh, and then you understand that they are getting it. But in online classes, most of the students switch their videos off, and you actually cannot force them. And at one point, as a teacher, I also, started keeping my video cameras off, because I'm giving lectures and the slides are there. And since I cannot see them, why should they see me? And I mean, this face visibility doesn't matter at all. So I mean, it's a completely different kind of identity. I mean, this emotional transaction, emotional communication between the teachers and learners are missing. So the identity is very close to anonymity in a way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Naushad Bhai, for sharing your thoughts.
Add something
yes,
that,
please.
Yeah, I'm also thinking in terms of trust issue, so suddenly, with this online platform, so we don't trust one another. For example, we don't trust, whether the students are really there, whether somebody else is sitting next to our students, whether the parents are listening to my lecture. I have to be conscious of my, so as Naushad was saying that, you cut a joke and there is no laughter. So somebody would so be generous enough to turn the mic on, so few seconds later. And by that time you have moved on to another idea. So there's kind of a ripple effect of a laughter sometimes, if they're generous. And also, whenever they're doing assignments, you think that, they're all cheating, even though, they have found their ways of going through the Turnitin, so you hear about all the hacking Turnitin, using synonyms and others. So this non-human interaction is taking away some of the human qualities of a classroom. So yeah, that's what I actively think about. Thank you.
Thank you very much
I
for
would like
sharing
to,
your thoughts. Yes.
I would like to share something related to the fourth issues, like the difference between teacher identity and online teacher identity. And probably this is really very important for all of us to understand, or everyone in the teaching and everyone is feeling in this figure. And I personally like the work of French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu, as he said while talking about the identity, the internalization of the externalities and the externalization of the internalities. And as a teacher, when we are growing or transforming our identities, students are the one of the most important sources, and from their contribution, from their activities, we are taking necessary information and internalizing their what challenges or their strength. And as we are internalizing those things, we are growing as a teacher, we are transforming our identity. But what happens, like many of the audiences, including Shamsad sir and others, say that there are certain restrictions and students are not kind of sharing their point of view, or they are facing some sort of barrier to express themselves, and this is not a barrier for the students, and this is a barrier for us as well. And we have the barrier to understand what we have the barrier to know more about our students as well. So like internalizing the students' experience, that is really very crucial in this regard. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So I think, we need to move on because, there are many things I would like to talk about, and there are very lively interactions going on in the chat box. If you would like, you can have a look at those. I have to skip reading those for the time being. So, but I think, we will be able to address those at some point, throughout the presentation. So the comments that you posted in the chat box. So the online education scenario before pandemic, for us in Bangladesh, it's something probably we started doing for the first time when we were forced by the pandemic. But in other places, in developed countries like the US and UK, it has been there for a long time. And as you can see from the slide, Allen and Siemens study on more than 2,800 colleges and universities in the US reported that 6.7 million students were taking at least one online course. And there are many students who are actually taking fully online courses. And also Baxter studies show similar kind of situation in the UK as well. And the most recent data available from the US Department of Education shows that there were more than 3.1 million students enrolled in fully online education courses in fall 2017. So it shows that how prevalent online teaching learning is. It represents 15.4% of all students enrolled in US colleges and universities. So here in Bangladesh, we have started it, very new, but I think, we have to think about it, because we have to continue thinking about it, and we have to continue thinking about our online teacher identity, because I believe it's going to be there even in Bangladesh. So, if I think about myself, when I started my research on online teaching learning, and I always wanted to come back to Bangladesh, and I was very skeptical, and I was worried how my research or the kind of expertise I have will be valued when I come back to Bangladesh, because, as far as I know, there were no online classes before the pandemic, in Bangladesh, in higher education or other institutions as well. But now people have embraced it, whether you like it or not, people had to embrace it. And I see people are doing a lot of things now, even, tutoring online, school teachers, primary school teachers, everyone is trying their best to, teach online and, continue students, help support the students to learn, in this difficult time. Why identity development is important? I believe that's one question we should ask to ourselves. Teachers' perceptions of their own professional identity affect their efficacy, research shows, and professional development, as well as their ability and willingness to cope with educational changes and to implement innovations in their own teaching practice. And so there are other research actually that also suggest similar kind of findings. say, for example, Hong's study showed that there was a relationship between pre-service and beginning teachers' perceptions of their professional identity and their decisions to remain in or leave the profession. So, you know, how you perceive yourself as a teacher, that impacts your decision of, you know, remaining in the profession or not, whether you would like to remain in the profession or not. And, you know, in terms of online teacher identity or online teaching, there are researchers who argued that exploring online teacher identity allows for a greater understanding of teachers' relationships to the modality, because it's a completely new scenario for us. And it's a good idea to actually talk about identity, you know, teachers' identity, online teachers' identity. And if we try to define identity, there is no agreed upon definitions of identity itself. There are many diverse approaches to the concept of identity, and many definitions are given by researchers. But for my case, you know, I especially used James G's definition of identity, who defined identity as being recognized as a certain kind of person in a given context. So adopting G's definition, Luhmann defined teachers' professional identity as being recognized by self or others as a certain kind of teacher. And I actually took both of their ideas, you know, and consistent with G's and Luhmann's definitions, I defined online teacher identity as being recognized by self or others as a certain kind of online teacher for my PhD research. And as in the literature, the terms teacher identity and teacher professional identity are mostly used interchangeably. I also did not make a distinction between the two, teacher identity or teacher professional identity. And I would like to mention here that the concepts of a teacher identity and online teacher identity were not considered as dichotomous in my study. Rather, online teacher identity was seen as a component of a more general teacher identity. That's how I looked at it when I did my research. And so there are several characteristics of identity development described by different researchers. I know there are a few I have shared here from Luhmann 2007. So identity is socially constituted. That is, one is recognized by self and others as a kind of person because of the interaction one has with others. So interaction here is very important, and recognition, these two words, and I'll be talking about these a little bit and later in a while. So identity is constantly being formed and reformed. It's a something, you know, it's not static. And identity is multifarious, that is consisting of a number of interrelated ways one is recognized as a certain kind of person participating in social communities. And identity is constituted in interpretations and narrations of experiences. So, you know, there is substantial support in the literature for the concept that identity is never static or nor monolithic. It continues to be modeled by new experiences and understandings. For example, you know, the research by Ackerman and Mayher 2011, Johnston 2012, Tyler 2017, they have similar kind of you know, findings, and they claim similar kind of things as well. So G's identity theory makes it clear that while participation is key in key activities within a community of practice is critical, identity work occurs in the interpretation, narration, and thus recognition of that participation. So you participate in you know, specific activities within a community of practice, but at the same time you need to be you know, recognized by others. You know, your identity work occurs in the interpretation, narration, and thus recognition of that participation. And this recognition occurs both by self and by others. So that's also very important. And there is considerable support in the literature for the key role played by recognition, as Wenger describes identity development as a layering of events of participation and reification by which our experience and its social interpretation inform each other. And you know, there are more research you know, that suggests a similar kind of finding. So my study, I would like to talk a little bit about my study. I won't, talk too much about what I exactly did, but I will focus a little bit on relevant findings. So it was a qualitative research on online teacher identity development in the US context. And it was a case study of 7 participants from diverse backgrounds. I won't go into details about this. And the participants were being prepared to teach online. So the participants I interviewed. So they were preparing themselves to teach in online, and some of them were novice online teachers, and some of them were aspiring online teachers. So my study focused on identifying the kind of online teacher the participants aspired to be, and how that concept was influenced by the specific experiences in the course that was meant for preparing them to teach online. So they were taking a course, actually multiple courses, to prepare them to teach online. And, so the kind of online teachers they wanted to be, the participants wanted to be in that context when they were preparing themselves as online teachers. And so some of the findings that I believe are will be relevant for us, in Bangladesh context. For all the participants, their online teacher identity was an integral part of their overall teacher identity, not a distinct identity. That was one of the findings. And I see in the comments, some of you were have asked this question, if they are different at all, and how can we differentiate them? So it actually, depends on us how we look at ourselves. And the participants of my study, all of them, all 7 of them actually agreed that, held the view that online teacher identity was an integral part of their overall teacher identity. It was not a distinct one. And all reported to have realized that though technological skill is important for online classes, content and pedagogical knowledge combined with best teaching practices are even more important for online classes, or for any kind of teaching scenario. So this is also very, very important, because in online, whenever we talk about online classes, people think that you need to learn a lot about technology. You have to be an expert. You have to be tech savvy. But that's not the case. Actually, with the knowledge of very minimum, knowledge of technology, you can still be a very good online teacher. And so all the participants developed a greater appreciation for collaboration among colleagues, which became a part of their professional identity as well. So especially in the case of online teaching, I mean, for any teaching situation, we should be able to collaborate with our colleagues, and that strengthens our teaching capacity. And for online, probably it's even more important. I believe, we need to collaborate with each other, learn from each other, not only technology, about many other things. How to deliver, how to teach our students the best, in the best possible way, to have the best outcome. So again, I believe some of you have a relevant experience in terms of collaboration in an online teaching scenario. And so all the participants of my study reported to prefer hybrid online courses, some face-to-face meeting. And I believe many of you probably will have the same kind of opinion as well. For some participants, their professional identity as a TESOL teacher or special education teacher, actional coach, those also impacted the kind of online teachers they wanted to be. If you have other kind of teacher identities, specific teacher identities, those will probably impact the kind of online teacher identity you have or you would like to have. The perceived stigma of online teaching in one's field negatively affected some participants, although it also turned them into advocates of online teaching learning. So, there are negativity surrounding online education all over the world, not only in Bangladesh, actually, even in the US as well. There are people who are very negative about online. There are people who are very positive about it. And if there is stigma, that may impact the kind of, practices you will be able to, ensure in your classes, as well as how you see yourself as an online teacher. You will be probably concerned whether you are going to be recognized as a teacher, equal to a traditional teacher, as an online teacher, whether you are equal to the equally qualified or equally effective as an, as an online teacher. Um, uh, that's also very important. And then, so I would be talking a little bit about sensing online teacher identity, or that impact online teacher identity. So this diagram shows or identifies the key factors that my empirical findings suggest to have contributed most to the online teacher identity of my participants, as well as influenced its development throughout their journey. And I have divided them in two groups: internal factors and external factors, as you can see from this diagram. So I won't take much long about talking about this. Just very briefly, I'll go through these. Number one, internal factors. Teachers' educational goals and aims may affect their approach to online teaching. So what teachers hold as their larger aims for education has a considerable impact on whether and why they may want to engage in online teaching, or they may not want to engage in online teaching. So it will also affect what they will be most concerned about as online teachers, thus impacting the kind of decisions they will make as online teachers. And so say, for example, access to education, the kind of beliefs they have regarding access to education or equity. So, online education has a very, I think, contradictory kind of situation in terms of access and equity. It can give access or ensure equity to some extent. If you think about people with disabilities, those who cannot go to a campus, but you have an online class and those people can take the course from wherever they are. They don't have to worry about a ramp, wheelchair and all those things. So that way, it helps probably, access to education and equity. But on the other hand, not everyone has a computer or internet access, or other kind of logistics to attend or take online courses. So it's a very debatable kind of situation. Okay, number two, teachers' beliefs about how people learn best may affect their approach to online teaching. So what you believe about the way people learn. There are research, about it, and you can learn about those. You probably already have some beliefs, in terms of relationship with students and in terms of collaborative learning. So those will also impact your identity as online teachers. And teachers' professional values may affect their approach to online teaching. Again, collaboration with colleagues, lifelong learning. If you value lifelong learning, then probably you will look at yourself as a different kind of online teacher than the others, because especially in case of online teaching, you have to have updated knowledge, up-to-date knowledge in terms of technological development and how to use tools, etc. And then community of practice as well. So if you value a community of practice, and if you are a part of a community practice, and if you are aware of it, probably that will also impact the kind of online teacher you would like to be, or you are already. And teachers' existing sub-identities may affect their approach to online teaching. So as we already mentioned in the beginning, identity is multifarious. You can have several identities at the same time. So you're already the kind of sub-identities, or the kind of identities you have, the other identities you have already, those will impact your identity as an online teacher as well. Your traditional teacher identity, or your identity of business teacher, your identity of special education teacher, or your identity of a science teacher, those will impact your identity as an online teacher as well. Because in your field, it's probably looked in so many different ways, looked at in so many different ways. So, field specific identity and nationality, identity as face-to-face teacher. So all these will impact your online teacher identity as well. So there are several external factors. So say, for example, certain learning experiences may affect the development of an online teacher identity. Say, for example, what you read, your research findings, experiences as learners, experiences as teachers, reflections, all those will also impact your online teacher identity. Sorry, I don't have that much time, so that's why I'm just going through them very quickly. and certain professional experiences may affect the development of online learning, online teacher identity, and interaction within a community of practice may affect the development of online teacher identity as well. And perceptions in the field may affect the development of an online teacher identity. I have already mentioned negativity and stigma in the field that may affect your online teacher identity. So the key takeaways from this discussion, very briefly, I'll try to wrap up. So it is important to study online teacher identity. What kind of online teacher you aspire to be will affect your instructional decisions. Pause for a while and think about your teacher identity and your online teacher identity, the kind of things you would like to achieve, or the kind of practices you would like to be involved in. And also, interventions through coursework or teacher training can positively impact identity development. Doesn't matter whether you are teaching online or face-to-face. If teacher training programs address this and talks about it, about identity development, that may impact positively your teacher identity or online teacher identity. And teaching online and face-to-face are complementary to each other. This is also one of the main takeaways from my research. So they are not dichotomous, they are complementary to each other. Probably, this will just open more doors for you if you are an expert online teacher as well. So several external and internal factors impact online teachers' identity development. So these are the key takeaways from my findings and from the discussion today. So I would like to wrap up here with a quote from renowned educator and researcher and writer Parker J. Palmer. Good teaching cannot be reduced to techniques. Good teaching comes from the identity and integrity of the teacher. So with that, I would like to stop here. And if you would like to know more, you can search for my dissertation online. It's available through ProQuest. And if you don't have time to go through that huge document, which is 500 pages, you can just read probably the concluding chapter that will give you a very clear idea of what I did. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Farzana Sultana. That was very informative, and I'm sure a lot of things to take away from here. I can see a lot of comments in the chat box. I'm sure Farzana is going to have a great time going through them and answering maybe some of them there. Thank you so much, Dr. Farzana, for your session. To move on, our next speaker is Dr. Shaila Sultana, who is a professor and the former head of the Department of English Language at the Institute of Modern Languages, University of. She has been associated with ULAB as the advisor of Center for Language Studies and an adjunct faculty humanities since 2017. Professor Shaila Sultana has an MA from Jahangirnagar University, a second MA in ELT and Applied Linguistics from King's College London, and a PhD in Sociolinguistics from the University of Technology, Sydney. Her research interests include trans approaches to language and identity, sociolinguistics, sociology, critical geography, higher education, and the historical and sociocultural significance of English in post-colonial countries. She has authored numerous articles in renowned international applied linguistics journals. Her co-authored book titled Popular Culture, Voice and Linguistic Diversity has recently been published from Macmillan, Palgrave, UK, and another co-edited book, Routledge Handbook of English Language Education in Bangladesh, was published from Routledge, UK. She has also published several book chapters on gender performativity, critical awareness, multimodal resources of advertisements, and virtual spaces from Routledge and Multilingual Matters USA. She is on the editorial board of Language in Society, Journal of Asia, TEFL, and Delta. So a very, very long career. And of course, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome her in today's webinar. Her talk will focus on sociolinguistics in the context of applied linguistics and TESOL. Please welcome Professor Shaila Sultana.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you and welcome to my presentation entitled My my research itinerary from applied linguistics to social linguistics. Before I start the presentation, I'd like to thank the acting Vice Chancellor, Professor Shamshad Murtaja of University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh, and the Department of English and Humanities, and specifically Arifur Rahman, the head of the department, for inviting me as a speaker today. I would also like to thank Dr. Farzana Hafsa for all her support. It means a lot to me. So what are the objectives of today's presentation? With reference to my own research itinerary, from applied linguistics to social linguistics, I will share how my understanding of language teaching and learning has been enhanced by social linguistics. I will also draw attention to different topics of social linguistics, starting from language policies to language use in day-to-day life that have been adequately researched and significantly under-researched in Bangladesh. In addition, I will give suggestions about contemporary theoretical constructs and research designs that may be explored in the context of Bangladesh. I will end my presentation with some reflections on the directions and intellectual impact of social linguistics in Bangladesh in future. Let me start the presentation with a story, my story. I became an English language practitioner and applied linguist by accident. I was a young English literature teacher at the beginning of my career. One evening, I was standing in front of the purified water container at my in-laws. It takes a bit of time, you know that it takes a bit of time to get the water in a glass from the container. So I found a copy of Daily Star folded, lying right beside the water container. I looked at it and found the advertisement of Aussie scholarship. While I was filling the glass of water, I scanned through the advertisement standing there. And then and there I decided to apply, and eventually I received the scholarship to study TESOL. So it was a sheer coincidence that someone left the folded newspaper there. I didn't know who did it, and it was a big household with 15, 16 people. And I happened to take water from the container at the very moment. So I had a pretty long day. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't see the advertisement that day. So what I want to say here is that taking LT, TESOL, or applied linguistics as a vocation or as a profession was not an informed decision as such. However, that not so informed decision was the greatest decision ever in my professional life. The discipline was still in its infancy. After I returned from Monash in 2000 December, I found myself in a research context which had not been adequately explored as such. The discipline had more practical outcome. I could see that whatever I wanted to do in that area, it would help some people realistically in their practical life. And I saw the possibility of bringing changes to human life. And I also started teaching LT and applied linguistics in addition to English literature. And I found the courses more meaningful. Why? Why did I find those courses so meaningful? Because as a teacher of university, I found students taking a long time to adjust themselves in the English-only environment of the university. Many of them also repeatedly failed in English. In addition, they did not perform well in other courses, which they needed to write in English. The universities offered English courses for weaker students, but the courses seemed to provide little help to these students. I still remember several of my very intelligent, hardworking students who failed in one English course thrice and ultimately had to leave the university, as a pass grade was prerequisite in that specific English course in order to study in the university. The experiences of these students who were struggling in the university indicated a dissonance between the pedagogic practices of the university and the students' linguistic competence. The university had strict rules about the enforcement of English, and the students did not have adequate competence. Consequently, students who were weak in English struggled a lot to pass all the prerequisite courses in English. The sufferings and emotional turmoil that I had seen in my students, in fact, encouraged me to find out to what extent students were getting affected by the English-only environment of the university. I also wanted to know whether the universities could ensure pedagogic efficacy, learning for students with the English education. I thoroughly explored 3 prestigious journals on LT and applied linguistics in Bangladesh at that time: Dhaka University Studies, the Journal of the Institute of Modern Languages and Harvest, the Journal of English Language and Literature, and found that the bulk of the research had been done on language skills and teacher education. There had not been any work on the factors outside the classroom which were affecting students' performances inside the classroom. Or I couldn't find out why, even after attending regular classes, students were failing to learn the language and struggling to accept empowered identity in class. I realized that I needed a sound grasp of social linguistics in order to understand the factors that had strong influence on students' learning and identity within the classroom. So let's talk a bit about social linguistics in Bangladesh. Worldwide, in fact, the inception of social linguistics is quite new. It started in 1960s, early 1960s. And the inception of social linguistics in Bangladesh is even newer. We have published an edited volume, the Routledge Hamlet Handbook of Language Education in Bangladesh. And academics and researchers seem to have little interest in social linguistics research. Historically, if I look back, Professor Musa, you must have heard about him. He has analyzed the policy documents and conducted qualitative studies dealing with the perceptions and attitudes of people in society regarding language policies. These studies are significantly important and show the necessity of exploring linguistic variations even more with reference to social dynamics in Bangladesh. I've also identified that the governmental and popular discourses somewhat promotes a clear-cut, one-dimensional polarized understanding and a demarcated domain-specific allocation of language. For example, Bangla for home and heart, and English for official and international communication. So this sort of unidirectional relationship between and allocation of languages according to domains somewhat understates the underlying complexities of language used in society. In addition, there are scarcity of longitudinal or cross-sectional quantitative research studies in social linguistics in Bangladesh, which will validly claim the correlation between linguistic features and social dynamics, as we observe in the research done by Labov in 1970s or Trujillo in 1970s and 80s in the Western academia. There are some studies which are to some extent done here, but they're all decontextualized because of the preoccupation with linguistic features of Bangla or English. And there are no references to social dynamics beyond the demographic locations. For example, we don't learn about the relationship between linguistic features and socioeconomic background, educational background, class, profession, age, or gender. The phonological, morphological, or syntactical features are rarely addressed in relation to social dynamics. So consequently, what happens is that studies fail to bring deeper, novel, solemn findings about the linguistic variation observed in the spoken and written discourses in Bangladeshis. It seems like that the sociolinguists have little interest in exploring the relationships between phonological, morphological, semantic, syntactical, discoursal, or pragmatic features and social dynamics. Even though the universities offer specific linguistics, applied linguistics, and social linguistics courses at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels, in the departments of Bangla, English, linguistics in both public and private universities, these courses seem inadequate in developing students or future researchers' interest in social linguistics research. As a teacher of MA in TESOL and BA in TESOL programs at the Institute of Modern Languages, University of Dhaka, and even in my capacity of teaching at the University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh, I've observed that students' lack of interest in phonology, morphology, and syntax in general. Hence, this may be one of the reasons why we do not see social linguistics research with the close analysis of linguistic variations in relation to social dynamics. Then, considering the development of social linguistics and types of research studies done both in the past and present in global north and in Bangladesh, it is important that we reflect on the future possibilities of social linguistics research in Bangladesh. in a linguistically and socially diverse Bangladeshi context, social linguistics does have the potential to emerge as an independent discipline. Social linguistics also needs empirical sound research to show how linguistic features perpetuate social injustice and linguistic inequality. Only then, in fact, social linguistics may play an active role in minimizing the language-based marginalization and disadvantages that we observe in Bangladesh. So let's look at some of the areas that have been covered or well-researched in Bangladesh, and let's identify some of the areas that we should consider for extensive research in future. One area that has been relatively well-researched is language policies and language in education policies. It seems that the language policies and language in education policies have received utmost attention in social linguistics research in Bangladesh. Because of the historical, political, social, cultural, and economic roles of English and Bangla in post-colonial, post-independent Bangladesh, language policies and planning, language in education policy, the conflicting social linguistic realities instigated by these policies have been extensively covered by Obaid, by Kamrul, by Elizabeth Erling, by Saeed, Naushad Kabir, Arifa Rahman Madam. They have written in detail about these language policies and practices in Bangladesh. From other disciplines, Professor Shaukat Ansari, Professor Azam, Professor Shishir Bhattacharya, Professor Salimullah Khan, they have strongly recommended to introduce Bangla as a medium of education. Whereas Professor Mahmood Khan and I preferred bilingual education with an intention to de-eliticize English in Bangladesh. However, it is frustrating to see that even after almost 50 years of independence, we have not been able to come up with an effective, inclusive language policy that may challenge the one-dimensional, polarized understanding and demarcated domain-specific allocation of language. English is a tool of colonization, new colonization, and internationalization, whereas Bangla is a symbol of Bangladeshi nationalism, national identity, whereas indigenous languages are only for communication at home in informal private domains. Arabic, Sanskrit, or Pali as a language of religious activities, or other foreign languages as the language of popular culture. We also could not ensure equal language rights for indigenous and ethnic minority communities. This also indicates the limitations of our research too, or would I say that there is a less communication between the academic researchers and the government policymakers. Hence, this is the high time to conduct social linguistics research on language policies, keeping in consideration the language ecology, rather than having this polarized understanding of languages and domain-specific consideration of language. We should consider language policies and practices with reference to language ecology. The ecology of language as a metaphor defines language as living entities that live, thrive, grow, die, or coexist with other languages in the ecosystem. Language interact with socio-political, economic, and cultural realities of the language environment, and it is suggested that the ecology of language is maintained in the sustenance and survival of other languages within the realities of the language environment. Language ecology shows the necessity of a healthy coexistence of all the languages and linguistic diversity in the language environment. This ensures linguistic human rights and questions the valorization of any one language based on any specific political or historical issues. Language ecology indicates the futility of language planning that promotes monolingual biases that we observe in our country. Hence, there should be more constructive discussions about linguistic features and multilingual ecology. We should be challenging the predominant monolingual, monocultural, and mono-religious approaches to language, culture, and religion. Think about all these issues in relation to language ecology. I have already mentioned about indigenous language rights and advocacy. A research done by Hill. She suggested creating custodians of endangered languages in the local communities. And she thinks that these custodians of endangered languages in local communities will create a sense of belonging and as a key of ensure language revitalization. So what does this custodian of endangered languages in local communities mean? Here, the custodians are expected to increase the popularity of the dying languages by showing its economic and functional values in society. In other words, according to Hill, ensuring the social and economic function and the use of indigenous languages should be the sui generis of language revitalization. We should look for a newer kind of social linguistic research that would create modules for workshops, events, and information dissemination opportunities for the relevant stakeholders at grassroots level. So the custodians of endangered languages in the local communities may be introduced. We need a balanced approach to language and culture that will ensure a functional modus vivendi between threatened and unthreatened languages. And social linguists may conduct research on language in culture, apprenticeship in the context of Bangladesh, and show how it may be practiced in order to ensure linguistic rights of marginalized indigenous communities. In relation to the domain of education, education institutions in Bangladesh, both public and private, give immense importance to English in order to develop students' competence in English and help them to excel in their academic and professional life. The proliferation of English medium schools and national curriculum textbook endorsed English version curriculum introduced to the public education system, in fact, demonstrates the significance and extrinsic and intrinsic values associated with English. There are lots of research about it. Hamid, again, Philip Sargent, Saidur Rahman, and I have also shown that the only Bangla language movement in general and supremacy of English as the only foreign language in the education system have given rise to conflicted realities for English language teaching in Bangladesh. English still has the magical spell of the colonizers, and it seems to play a significant role in segregating and marginalizing people based on individual linguistic competence in it. It may be concluded that EMI is a much researched area in relation to language and education policies. However, there should be research studies on policy formation and implementation in relation of medium instruction at the primary, secondary, and higher secondary level of education, because we see lots of research at the tertiary level of education, not much on, in the context of primary, secondary, and higher secondary level of education in Bangladesh. The present practice of keeping the students in Bangla only environment for the first 3 levels of education, and then immersing them into English only environment at the 4th level demonstrates its limitations. The present practice seems even more unrealistic because it disregards the linguistic, social, and economic realities in students' life. In other words, there should be research on the medium of instruction of other levels of education too. Only an effective language policy at, considering all these levels ensure students' smooth transition from one level of education to the next. And since classroom is not a neutral site of pedagogic transactions, these sites need to be revisited in order to observe silence and non-participation. I always say that silence speaks more than words, and I believe many of you think in the same manner. So we also have to observe silence and non-participation with a greater depth. Even a silence of a student may convey meaning worth 1,000 words. Hence, there is a necessity of conducting ethnographic studies for drawing in students' voices and actions. This sort of investigation on a greater and equal number of students from different education, demographic, and socioeconomic backgrounds may reveal the dissonance and the contradictions in academic practices. We also have to think about the formal and informal domains beyond education. I have already mentioned that the extrinsic and intrinsic values of languages have been investigated in sociolinguistics in Bangladesh. But the question is whether it is possible to cover all the other domains. For example, more research studies are needed on the domains of government offices, media, press, law, prison, medical centers, hospitals, or religion. Under research areas also include studies of the relationship between language and law, language and medicine, language and media, language and business. The role of foreign languages has been conveniently forgotten. Naushad Kabir identified that languages like Arabic and Persian in mosque and madrasas and in waz mahfil for the Muslims, Sanskrit in temples for the Hindus, Pali in monasteries for the Buddhists. These areas need to be explored more. So different local and foreign languages in all these domains need to be researched, and they need our immediate attention. So more in-depth studies are needed on popular culture as well. I have done certain number of research studies on it, such as music, film, music video, advertisement, image, photo links, then all these resources that come from Bangladesh, Mongolia, India, Korea, Russia, Japanese, Australia, UK, USA. And these are all parts of youth language practices. I have covered in a co-authored book with Sandra Dobachin and Alistair Pennico. These studies explored how different genres of popular culture afforded voices to young adults and how these voices allowed them to transgress linguistic and cultural boundaries. However, I think there are more research needed in this area. The intricate relationship between voices borrowed from popular culture and social and historical, political and ideological realities can be explored further. A popular means of entertainment such as manga, anime, K-pop. I have become a big fan of K-drama nowadays. So, and I'm also thinking about doing a research on it, perhaps if I have time in future. So these things like manga, anime, K-pop, memes, prank videos, skits, Hindi serials, and the impact on the socio-psychological construction of individual and collective ways of being need to be explored. There is more necessity of research to show that popular culture intersects with individual life trajectories, demographic locations, age, educational background, and gender. So popular culture is a crucial site of culture, desire, and identity, and we should have more research on it. Another dynamic is space and language. While acknowledging the importance of language in applied linguistics and social science research, the signifying processes cannot be reduced to everyday discourses only. Conducting research on social phenomena such as linguistic racialism or power inequality only through language is limiting. So we have to consider some way of including the space and spatial realities into our research. So there is a necessity of transgressing the boundaries set by the post-movement in applied linguistics, going beyond the logocentrism of post-structuralism. Logocentrism means that over-fetishization, obsession with language. We see that in post-structuralism. So it is important to see how individuals use science and other semiotic resources in the real world. In disordered complexity of the spatial realities. Any social linguistics research should consider not only the contextual or physical properties of space, but also the social organization of space in relation to time, how it is organized and why, what role it plays in individual and collective language practices, what thoughts and ideologies are brought into it, by whom, with whom, how they relate themselves with space and for what social action. It is expected that this kind of researching, as a consequence, may identify a broad range of semiotic possibilities going beyond linguistic analysis. Linguistic landscape, that is also another area. In fact, my friend and colleague, Mahmoud, has done lots of research with his students, and I hope some of them get published so that other general academics and researchers can read them and be enlightened. But in terms of publications, we don't see much published on linguistic landscape of Bangladesh. It is yet another area that may be explored in social linguistics. My esteemed colleague, Rahla Banu, and her supervisor, Ronald Sussex, in 1999 and 2001, had 2 research papers on linguistic landscape, where they looked into the business names of billboards and explored the patterns of code switching and mixing. This linguistic landscape research, then again, after that, we haven't had any important significant research that I have come across. So linguistic landscape research may include all the visual representations ranging from different categories of teaching aids. Teaching aids can be a part of linguistic landscape research, to wall decorative arts, to billboard advertisements. With a multimodal analysis of linguistic landscape, research may explore the ways language and semiotic resources interact with contextual realities. And these are again determined by the historical, political, social, and economic factors that influence the choices of languages and signs and symbols in linguistic landscape. The social linguistics will be able to address the material, discursive, and ideological processes that influence, linguistic landscape. Digital space is another unique platform that needs to be explored. I have done a bit of research on digital platforms, but again, we need young researchers coming forward and doing research on digital discourses and digital spaces. Everyday act of linguistic transgression in digital spaces need exploration for understanding people's denial, affirmation, or criticism of linguistic and social boundaries. In addition, digital spaces in the era of globalization, with the immense multimodal potency, give Bangladesh's opportunities of new forms of communication. Most importantly, linguistic and multimodal semiotic resources mediated within digital spaces create a fluid and democratic third space for people against the backdrop of the society, which is highly structured, normative, and politically and socially and culturally value-laden. Hence, digital spaces need attention in social linguistics. Nationality, religion, ethnicity, gender, these also need specific attention from the young researchers and scholars in Bangladesh. Bangladeshi nationalism needs to be explored adequately in the social linguistics of Bangladesh, specifically with reference to the aggressive Bengali ultra-nationalism, which reconfirms that nationality is a political banner and gives rise to such politically powerful feelings as nationalism, which in turn is all too frequently liable to degenerate into chauvinism and xenophobia. Its flip side, it was identified and said by Raja Gopalan in 2001. With reference to the realities, social linguistics research in Bangladesh needs to question the sustenance and reproduction of values and ideologies associated with nation, territorialization, national language, national symbol in Bangladesh, exaggerated pronunciation, exemplified in orthographic patterns, slang, swear words, all these things which we use for presenting hyper nationalistic identity attributes need further exploration. Islam has also played a significant role in the political history of Bangladesh. Brooke Bolander from Monash University and I have a paper on it. Islamic radicalism has gained popularity amongst educated upper class Bangladeshis, and Kabir has identified that. But this is, again, this research is a sociological research. There isn't any research, applied linguistics research observed in relation to religion. There has also been a resurgence of Islamic fundamentalism in Bangladesh. Against the backdrop of the rise of radical Islam and extremist groups across the world, Bangladesh has also experienced several territorial attacks. So a great number of studies on religion are done from the lens of political science, sociology, and international relations. However, there is none on the discursive realization of religion in Bangladesh. So there is a need to understand how Bangladeshis react to Islam as practiced and sustained in Bangladesh. Bangladeshis also seem to be conflicted by the liberal interpretation of religion and local interpretation of Islam based on local preachers. These performances are biased based on partial and inadequate understanding of religion, on many occasions creating religious fanaticism, intolerance, and bigotry in different spaces. This needs to be addressed immediately. The gender demarcated roles of men and women in the Bangladeshi social and religious have to be, need to be researched as well. Just a sec. Yeah, okay. Women in general are discriminated in the household based on existing sociocultural practices, showing the intricate relationship among language, gender, and space. There is also necessity of exploring the gender conformity in Bangladesh. Also think about masculinity as well. Men do gender and fortify their masculinity by emphasizing strengths, aggression, competition, winning in the discourses. Hence, discursive realization of male gendered identity that promotes inequality, abuse, prejudices, misogyny, or male supremacism need to be explored. And then again, another very timely topic, buzzword, language and sustainable development. Obaid Hamid, Saidur Rahman, Munir Rashid, Elizabeth Erling, Kambul Chaudhry, they have done plenty of research on language and sustainable development, but again, these are very much occupied with the English language. Professor Shishir Bhattacharya suggested more research studies on the role of the Bangla for sustainable development. In addition, what specific role sustainable development has in relation to indigenous ethnic or ethnic minority languages in Bangladesh should be explored. I think I have run out of time. Let's summarize. I think that would be better. You can read my book chapter. It is, I will give you the reference to the book chapter so that you can read that. We should, just one thing, translingual practices in Bangladesh, that is another important. All right, okay, let me just cover this point. Social linguistics research in the local context of Bangladesh has not adequately addressed the recent changes in the approaches to language, such as unequal Englishes, polylanguaging, transglossia, translanguaging, translinguistics, metrolingualism, translocal activity spaces. In the vibrant backdrop of such compelling and somewhat overwhelming socio-political cultural context of Bangladesh, the overall multilingual ecology and the interaction among the languages need to be explored through this trans lens. So we need social linguistics research with cutting-edge theories that develop a nascent understanding about the intricate relationship between language variations and social dynamics. So let's summarize what I have discussed today, and perhaps it will be easier for you if I show you just in a bullet point, the summary in a bullet point. I hope you can see it. Can you see it?
Yes, Shalapa.
Yes,
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. Okay. So if you want to know about my thoughts about the future directions of social linguistics, you can read this paper. It came out this year, at the beginning of this year, on language and leap year from Dhaka Panpuri. It is edited by Professor Shishir Bhattacharya and Naushat Kubir. So you may have certain directions about the social linguistics research in Bangladesh from this chapter. So this is the summary. I hope you can see that. So in summary, the following objectives may be pursued by young academics and researchers for future research in social linguistics. We should try to understand the role of different regional varieties of Bangla and indigenous languages in addition to standard Bangla and standard protocol Bangla. And we should also look at the foreign languages in addition to English in the multilingual ecology of Bangladesh. We should be questioning the accepted definition of colonialism, post-colonialism, mother tongue, international language, global language, preservation, assimilation, monolingualism. We should be asking, these questions and problematize these very accepted terms that we use very frequently in our academic discourses. We should identify the diverse language use from sociolinguistically unexplored formal and informal domains in Bangladesh, such as politics, religion, family, friends, social media, popular culture, virtual space, with specific focus on different types of language practices observed in face-to-face conversation. We should explore the intricate relationship among language and social dynamics, such as nationality, class, ethnicity, race, and gender, with an interdisciplinary framework. We should engage in a critical exploration of translinguistic movement in sociolinguistics research and current debates about heteroglossia, translingualism, multilingualism, translanguaging, and transglossia. We should try to show the relevance of discourse analysis, again, in the context of Bangladesh. We don't see many research studies done in relation to discourse analysis, critical discourse analysis, conversation analysis. Mahmoud has immense interest in this area, and perhaps in future we will have some enlightening pieces from him. But again, we haven't got many in the context of Bangladesh. So I expect our young researchers and academics will take interest in discourse analysis, critical discourse analysis, conversation analysis, or transglossia, the framework that I have developed as effective framework for analyzing sociolinguistic data. I also expect that they will sensitize people about multilingualism in Bangladesh and raise awareness about marginalization, violence, intolerance, and injustice sustained through discourses in different media and spaces of Bangladesh. I have been trying to write about these issues and talk about these issues. In fact, on Thursday, in an university in India, I talked about religionism, nationalism, and ethnicism that are in rise in the context of Bangladesh. So young researchers should also come forward and sensitize people about these issues. They should also come up with research and take steps to ensure linguistic rights, linguistic equality, and social justice in society. They should draw attention of intelligentsia, language educators, and practitioners, and policymakers, both local and international, to the socially and spatially situated nature of language practices in Bangladesh. And collectively, we should support readers from the Western academia. Not only the local academia, but we should also address the Western academia to understand the sociolinguistic profile of a contemporary South Asian country like Bangladesh. Because it is generally accepted and perceived as monolingual, monocultural, and peripheral. We should be questioning those stereotype representation of Bangladesh in the Western academia. And we should do it with contemporary theories and empirical evidences. And I expect that young academics and researchers may gradually build up the knowledge necessary to critically engage with linguistics in relation to society. As a result, they will also become aware of linguistic and social discrimination based on linguistic features and its relationship with the socioeconomic condition, class, education, religion, geographic location, nation, gender, race, ethnicity, or any other social dynamics that require our immediate attention. The purpose is to develop a sense of individual and collective responsibility. We have to do that. As applied linguists, as social linguists, it is our responsibility to develop that individual collective responsibility so that we, the academics and researchers, wherever we are located, in whatever capacities we function in society, we may work towards linguistic and social justice and equity. As you know, আমাদের একটা কথা আছে না যে আপনি যত জানবেন আপনার দায়িত্ব তত বেশি। তো আমার কাছে মনে হয় আমরা যেহেতু জানি আমাদের দায়িত্ব হচ্ছে এসব ব্যাপারে কথা বলা, একটা ইন্ডিভিজুয়াল অ্যান্ড কালেকটিভ রেসপন্সিবিলিটি আমাদের এটা সবার মধ্যে এটা সচেতনতা তৈরি করা। আজকে আমি এখানেই শেষ করছি, ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you so much, Professor Shala Sultana, for a thorough overview of sociolinguistics research in Bangladesh and the further scope of possible research in applied linguistics and TESOL. And thank you, Dr. Sayeda Farzana Sultana, for your very informative talk on online teacher identity, very timely and useful discussion. Now, I would like to welcome the head of the Department of English and Humanities, Ms. Arifa Goni Rahman, to give the vote of thanks for today's webinar.
Thank you, Nadia. So I'm still kind of reeling from all the information that we have been provided with today. So, and these two very wonderful and highly pertinent presentations were necessary and I think very relevant. And I would like to offer my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Shala Sultana and Dr. Sayeda Farzana Sultana for providing us with such important ideas to think about, as well as significant necessary areas of research as we move forward through a time that has been difficult for all of us. So thank you very much for these talks. My heartfelt thanks also to our audience members who have joined us from schools and colleges all over Bangladesh, as well as from abroad, and our colleagues from abroad, to our colleagues from different universities and from Belta, TESOL, BD, Circle, English Teachers Association of Bangladesh, ETAB, and others, to my colleagues from the Media Studies and Journalism Department, the ULAB School of Business, Computer Science and Engineering Department, the Center for Language Studies, and from the Center for Sustainable Development, and of course to all our students. I apologize if I've missed anyone. Thank you for all your enthusiastic participation in the discussion. There have been lots of comments and questions in the chat box, and perhaps the speakers would like to address them at some point. I would also like to take the opportunity to invite you to future programs such as this, because as a department and as individuals, we believe in the concept of teachers helping teachers. So in the chat box, I've provided the email address of our department where you can send an email to be added to our listserv, and we can send you notifications of relevant upcoming programs. My gratitude to Professor Shamshad Mortaza, Acting Vice Chancellor of ULAB and the Dean of School of Arts and Humanities, for always being there no matter what. And my gratitude to Professor Kaiser Haq and to Professor Syed Manzurul Islam, who are our guiding lights always. Let me extend my thanks now to the team members who have been instrumental in putting this event together through their hard work and dedication. The event committee members, Dr. Sayeda Farzana Sultana. So while she was preparing for her presentation, she was also looking after the logistics behind this program. Ms. Tanzia Siddiqa, Senior Lecturer of DEH, Mr. Sheikh Nahian, Lecturer DEH, and Ms. Sumaya Kabir, Lecturer DEH. Our MC today, Ms. Nadia Rahman, Assistant Professor of DEH. Our student, Syed Masudur Rahman Siam, who has designed the poster and who has been throughout the term designing posters for our different programs. Thank you, Siam. Our fantastic IT team, especially Mr. Arifullah Al Mamoon and Mr. Shamshar, who is with us today, for supporting us today and every day. And to our communications office for supporting us with publicity. Once again, thank you all for being here, and I really look forward to meeting you all again in future programs. So do send us that email expressing your interest to be notified about future programs. Have a wonderful day and do stay safe. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
That brings us to an end to our today's webinar. Thank you all for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you again in the next webinar that we arrange. Please stay safe, stay at home, and be healthy. Thank you very much. Have a great evening ahead.
Thank you, Nadia. Bye-bye.